Baseball. I love it. We've been playing it for a month now, man. So, hey, don't say you didn't get playoff baseball because they've been playing it for a month now, really hanging every week. This is the most important series coming up here. This is the biggest one coming up here. Well, by default,
until the next one, right?
Yes, until the next one. Luckily, there's no more left, so the Indians really can sell these as the biggest games of the season, and because there's none left. So there you go. I can't wait, man.
Exactly.
I just got to get through this weekend first. Let's get it back home, and let's have some fun, man. But speaking of getting it back home, man, I don't know wherever you want to start with this, man, but they did all kinds of stuff last weekend at home that they haven't done in a while, JK, and I'm talking about the Browns, man.
Oh, did the Browns play last week? Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Right. That's
did.
right. And
yeah.
They won at home, the home opener for the first time in a decade. And just, hey, man, you talk to me about it. You watched the game like I did. We've been talking about it all week. Where were you at last week with the Browns?
Well, I honestly, for much of that game, I mean, the great start, and we were talking throughout, they had the great start, which was a surprise. We talked about last week how important it was that they got off to a good start, that they proved that the first half in Pittsburgh was an aberration, that they're not going to be a slow starting team, and they didn't. So they responded to that, which was great. My big concern for most of the day, right up until the very end, and even beyond, really, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, Dwayne Rudd to take his helmet off. But the storyline I kept seeing, or what I kept hearkening back to, that this felt like one of the games from any number of games from the Butch Davis era, in that, if you remember, one of the, perhaps the legacy of the Butch Davis era Browns was that this was a team that would start games fairly strong, that you could tell that they were prepared, they'd had a good week of preparation, they knew what they were doing, they'd scouted their opponent, they had a good game plan in effect, and would start well, would build a lead, and would fade as the game went on. And you sensed this game going that way, that they were just being, and that was the legacy of Butch Davis, is that he and his staff a lot of times were just out-coached. They did a nice job during the week and then just would be out-coached on Sunday once variables started to change and people began to adjust. And that's what this felt like on Sunday. Not to blame the coaching staff, but that's what this felt like. And you could just see it happening. You could see that happening. You could see when they missed the extra point, you thought, my God, this is going to come back. This is going to haunt them. Just watch. And it very nearly did. And yet then right up to the very end, and you said it too, right when it happened, you pointed out that third down sack that changed the course of the game. Really, even if you take away the importance of it, the Saints, it prevented the Saints from getting the first down. It essentially took them out of field goal range, because if the Browns needed a touchdown on that last drive, I don't think they would have gotten it. I think that changes everything about those last few minutes. So a huge play, maybe the biggest defensive play the Browns have had in 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, that's how long we're talking about, seriously, since we saw a defensive play that big in a game with this much on the line. So a huge step there, and then Brian Hoyer doing his John Elway impression from the 4-yard line into enemy territory there to set up the field goal. And even that, the last drive had a few moments of like, here we go. When Miles Austin makes the catch along the sideline, you're waiting for them to overrule it and say, no, it's not a catch, he was out of bounds. Whether it was the correct call or not, you just knew the Browns were going to get screwed by it. When that last pass went up in the air, and you just see the poor guy twisting around, he's like, he's not going to catch this, and we're going to be talking about it all week. Oh, if only he'd have caught that, we'd have won the game. But he did, and then you saw the flag and said, oh, he's going to get called for pushing up. No, he didn't. And then it was down to, okay, here's the kicking team that blew the extra point, and sure enough, put it right through. Yeah, and to their credit again, too, that they did spend just the right amount of time. I was really afraid that if the Browns scored with 30 seconds left, they'd have been in trouble, because the defense had struggled for much of the second half and the last three quarters. So to give Drew Brees any amount of time would have been dangerous, needing only a field goal. But with 3 seconds left, it was just enough to have to end with the kickoff. So, yeah, huge win. I mean, really a surprise to me, to a lot of people. But, yeah, I mean, but now, again, tying this in with the Indians, this is something else that the Browns have sort of suffered from over the years, that they have not been able to put anything together back-to-back. When they have had the occasional, rare, but occasional, big win like this, big upset type of win, big win for a home crowd, whatever, they have never, very, very rarely have they ever followed it up. They then instantly go out with everybody upbeat and optimistic. They go out the next week and fall on their face. So this is a really big game this week for the Browns to come out and prove that, you know what, last week was not a fluke. This is something we can expect from this team to show up and be gritty and hang in there to the end. So the stakes, I would say, are even higher this week with that home opener under their belts and that sort of that monkey off their back a little bit. But now there's expectations. Now there's optimism. Now people are expecting to see the similar type of effort that you had last week. So this is a big week. This is like I said, I think this is bigger than last week was.
Oh, I do too, absolutely. And you can go right back to the same last year that they won their home opener to find the last year that they went 2-0 at home to start the season, and that was back in 2004. So, you know, right. It's been a decade. And you when you summed up all that stuff about the game, I mean, when people say to me, especially people that are still just completely not on the Browns at all, and they're just like, well, big deal there, and they've won games before, what makes this different? The end. That's what made it different, is exactly what you said, how they're always, like Josh Cribbs, you say, we almost always almost win, but they're always close, and they lose them, and everything that you described, we watched, and they lost this way, that they lost every way. Like, we know every way that you can lose a football game, like stuff you don't think of. You watch a game with a Cleveland fan, and they'll be like, no. Don't you know he could take his helmet off? He could take his helmet off on the last play of the game, and they could get to kick a field goal and win. And they're like, I've never seen that happen. We have. I'm just saying, that's what it's like here. That's what it's like here in Cleveland, man. Yeah. We've seen some strange ways to lose some football. And the fact, and also, too, is it wasn't an also-ran. Because it's one thing to do what they did last week against the Raiders or the Jags or something like that. You know, a team that's struggling, a team that you know what I mean, that they don't have any track record of success either. But you've got a veteran coach and a veteran quarterback. Not just talent, but been there, done that, and you made one more play than they did at the end. And the Browns never make one more play than the other team at the end. So that makes me go, damn, maybe there is something different to the makeup of these guys. And I said, too, JK yesterday, Kendall Lewis and I were talking about how, you know, and he loved DeQuell Jackson and TJ Ward, but he doesn't think Whitner and Dansby are as good talent-wise as the guys that they replaced. But you had a bunch of guys telling, hey, we're going to turn it around, that have never turned it around. A bunch of guys saying, hey, we're going to win next week, that never won next week. That didn't. The guys, you know, the quarterbacks in the huddle have never brought you back in the fourth quarter. So you don't believe them when they tell you it's going to happen. You go, yeah, well, okay, I still get paid this week. And when you change the messengers, sometimes it's actually believable, especially when the other combination is a bunch of young players that don't know any better. They haven't been here getting their brains kicked in for the last 5-10 years. You know what I mean? So you got a bunch of young, hungry guys. You combine that, especially you got a bunch of undrafted guys, so they got a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove that they deserve to be in the NFL. And then you got a couple of surly guys that have been there, won some Super Bowls, been to some Super Bowls, been to some playoff games that look around. All of a sudden, you get a real competent football team, you know?
Yeah, and this is how you change this mentality, is that you can fire all the coaches you want, fire all the general managers, bring in whoever you want to on the field. It's about getting it done on the field. It's about changing the story, because you're right. It's easy, and we still see this in other sports. We see this certainly with the Cubs. We saw it for years and years and years with the Red Sox, that there is sort of a saturation factor, that the fans' pessimism and worry does translate onto the field. When are you going to choke? When are you going to choke? And you can't hear that as a player year in, year out, and have any sense of the history of the franchise you're playing for, and not just say, yeah, you know what, when are we going to choke? It's so that's why week one was painful, because that's typical Browns right there.
Again.
But when you do something like what they did in week two, now you're right, because there are guys who aren't steeped in even just recent Browns history. They don't know about the last time. They don't know about Dwayne Rudd. They don't know about these silly ways that the Browns have lost games. They just know, you know what, last week we were down, and Hoyer drove us from the 4 and got us the winning points. We got the sack, the third down sack that we needed. to save the game and keep us alive, that's what they remember. And that's what you build off. That's what, inevitably, every year in the NFL, there's at least one team that has some sort of big turnaround season. And it's by winning, they start out by winning games like this. They'll win a game like this early, and it begins to snowball. Then the next week, they're like, yeah, well, I remember what happened last week. We can do that again. What do we care? It's so important to set that tone early in how you're winning games. To win, first of all, and then to prove that, yeah, we're not the same team we were the year before. Even if it's a dumb luck, no matter what it is, even if you're not more talented than the team you're playing, which the Browns were not last week, clearly. But they did the little things, they did the things that they needed to win, and that's hopefully, that's what's going to carry over. But again, now you've got to back that up. It doesn't mean a whole lot if this week you go out and fall on your face and lose to Baltimore, and you think, okay, yeah, now maybe they're right. Last week was the fluke. Which is it going to be? 2007 is a great example. They had that huge game with Cincinnati early. They scored 51 points.
Yep.
Great, big, thrilling, exciting game. Set the tone for the entire season. Now, we've got an offense. They scored 7 points the week before. Looked terrible. Week 2, they score 51. Oh, this is what we can do. And it snowballed. And we had a 10-6 season, the best season that we have had since they've been back easily. And that's the kind, not saying that's going to happen here, that this is the equivalent of that week 2, but that's what you're looking for. And that's what the Browns, that's their mission this week, is to go out and say, you know what, last week was not a fluke. We're going to build off of that and try and turn this thing around.
And I'll tell you, it's tough. I mean, I mentioned all week that, and I know some of it is coach speak, but I know they believed every word of it. The Browns from day one this week said nothing against the teams that we've played, but this team that we're playing is clearly the best of the three, and this is going to be the biggest challenge. And, you know, I agree with that. I mean, I was saying this the last couple of days, is to me, you know, you get physical with New Orleans, not saying that they can't do it too, but that's not their game. That's not their style. That's going to be a little awkward for them, man. But you get down in the trenches with Baltimore, that's where they live, man. They love it, man. So This is going to be one of those games that people say the North now, but this is going to be one of those old school, like Pittsburgh and Cleveland used to be, as far as physical and in the trenches, especially if the weather doesn't cooperate here this weekend as well. We may get our first little bit of test of the weather. I like that too, because Mike Pettin says it's an all-weather team is what he's trying to build, and I've always wondered why Cleveland doesn't do that, because we have all weather. So why wouldn't we have an all weather team? But, you know, this is going to be a good test, man. This is going to be, and you may lose this, but if you answer the bell, that's what I want to see. You know, if you lose this game, we talked in the preseason, well, what if they go 0-3, but every one of them is hard fought to the end and they play better than you thought? Does that change the way you look at it? And we all said, yeah, well, they're already ahead of the game in my thought, that many people had them at 0-3 going to the bye. They've already won one. I mean, you can let your eyes get big and go, hey, man, you could head into this bye and just say, man, you match Baltimore physically, you could head into this bye 2-1, and that would really flip some people's predictions over. But then you've got a bye week, and you've got Pittsburgh coming out of it, and revenge on your mind, and man, all of a sudden, this season, like you said, starts rolling downhill. Either way, you've got to play great this weekend, win or lose, to take that into the bye and get ready for that stretch of games coming out.
Oh, absolutely, and you're absolutely right too, that this is going to be probably the most physical game they have played thus far. And really, I'm really looking at the Browns' defense, because they have not, the nice third down stand at the end of the game last week and the pick six notwithstanding, they have really not looked good statistically these first 2 games, and dug themselves a huge hole against Pittsburgh, allowed New Orleans to dig their way out of a big hole last week. So this is real. We need to see if the Browns defense is really this bad, because that's 2 straight games they've given up almost 500 yards, and that you can't do that. I think the offense has looked better than we have hoped. The running game in particular, really thrilled with that. Love that they're sticking with that, and that seems to be developing quite nicely. But you can't count on the Browns offense to win this game. This is going to be up to the Browns defense. Has to step up. Has to be better. Very simply, if the Browns defense is not better than they were the last 2 weeks, the Browns are going to lose. Very simply.
That's absolutely it, man. And then, like I said, you could show up still, man, and maybe it won't be enough in the tank here. This is going to be a defensive battle, and don't let that fool you that they don't have weapons over here. And we're going to talk about it. Jeff Gorman's got the Ravens scouting report in a bit, but not just Flacco. You've got Smith, and you've got some weapons out there, you know. So you definitely need to make sure that defensively you show up. And they can still run the ball. Hey, they don't have Ray Rice. That's fine. They plugged a couple of